Hello there, I am back with another video. It is 3:04 p.m. Oh my gosh, the day is going by. And I'm going to tell you, today I woke up very unmotivated. I'm burnt out. That's what it is. I am burnt out. Let me shut this window really quick. I'm just like, tired of thinking with the same repetitive thoughts. And sometimes it's veering off into little sub-subjects that are actually related to the main subject, okay? Today I'm just like, thinking of I want to get out of the house, but earlier today I didn't even want to get out of the house. I just wanted to stay in bed and go to sleep, but I could not find any comfort in my mind to, how you relax and then you just go back to sleep. That wasn't going to happen. And I'm not the kind of person who likes to sleep in either. It's just, I'm really bored with my life right now. I don't like not having, a shitload of things to do. I hate being at home all the time, and I don't like having, just limited things to do in my life. I feel like, I'm disappointed because I've been redirected, so to speak, in my life, and I'm just somebody who prefers to constantly be active. Anyway, I did have some thoughts that came to my mind this morning. My first thought this morning was just like, okay, I know I need to get out and do more things, okay? And I'm trying to figure out things that will get me out of the house more. And of course, I go to the library. I have to go to the store at times. I mean, that's like, that's not even fun, really. It's just something you have to do. But, it's difficult to find activities. And I did mention a couple of days ago where I was talking about different business ideas. I don't have the ability to have like a business to where like I could have like the what do you call it, the dispensary and the bakery or whatever. I don't have any startup money to do that. So I wasn't saying that I was going into business, but that was one of my ideas. I remember thinking that a few years ago when I was working on the Patreon, and I was trying to create some sort of pathway, some sort of plan to plan my future, right? So I kept thinking, well, if I make a decent amount from Patreon, then I could somehow invest it into getting a dispensary open. Yeah, I mean, I do think like that. Like I said, I'm somebody who's by themselves, and I have to think by myself. But and this is one of the reasons why it kind of crossed my mind about the business license. And mind you, I may never ever own a business, like a brick and mortar business, but I do not want anybody ever trying to play with me and putting things in my way to prevent me from doing it. This is what freedom is, okay? And I really do resent, people messing with my life in the manner that it was. This is a part of, yeah, I feel traumatized. I'm traumatized by it, because it's a form of terrorism. It's like somebody messing with you. And I understand I brought up the whole issue with Rex Laverne over and over and over again. And it's just a lot of feelings of pain, a lot of feelings of how dare you, a lot of feelings of me feeling frustrated because, this, not just this man, this is a sort of religious thinking, okay, that I have chose all my life to not have any part of. I want nothing to do with, but this whole issue imposed itself on me, okay? And from what I get and my intuitive message, hang on a second, I'm going to have to turn the air conditioner on. And it's one of those weird, like I mentioned before, during this time of the year in Bakersfield, it'll be bright and sunny one day where you think, okay, I can, put on some shorts, and then all of a sudden it gets a little cold. Earlier this morning, it was really chilly. Now it's warm in my house. It's just one of those things. During this time of the year, April, May you just can't make up its mind. Hang on a second. Okay, so, man, what's weird is it's only 75 degrees in the house. I'm just feeling like I'm burning up. Anyway, okay, so I was thinking about how I was getting some intuitive messages about my mom and my sister and my brother, my whole family, okay? And I don't know if it was like maybe the Muma family from Lancaster. Now I know that I was in Lancaster as C.B. Braganza, and I was also, of course, in Lancaster as Maria Gordon, okay? So as my life is Maria Gordon, apparently from what I understand, okay, my family came to the understanding that I was connected to my soul tribe, I believe through maybe the Mumon family or something like that. And I do not know exactly when. I'm just getting these messages, and okay, here's the thing. I'm interested in knowing this, but I'm also tired of hearing the same old story. Like, there's nothing else to my life other than this whole drama. And don't get me wrong, I'm interested in the C.B. Braganza thing, but I'm tired of the drama, okay? Because it was like, I feel like my life was taken away from me. Okay, that's exactly how I feel. Okay, so my parents, my family knew the Mormons. Apparently, I do think that my mom must have known a little bit about Rex, and my sister must have knew about Rex. And what angers me is, like I said, keeping these sort of things secret, keeping it secret. He was trying to create my family, tension in the family, so where my family would be pressuring me to give up my lifestyle. Okay, so that I could, this is the religious thinking of some people. And I'm angry because my family should have told me. Okay, and so this is what I'm trying to tell people. I want my situation to be a learning lesson to people. Okay, your family should be protected at all times. Okay, just so you know, you should teach your family you don't keep those sort of secrets. There are no secrets within your family. Okay, and this is a very big sign of somebody trying to manipulate, and it could be a cult. And chances are it's a cult. Okay, you don't keep secrets from your family. Okay, that is what it is. So this whole thing, when I think of me, not going to my mom's funeral, my mom died. The last time I saw my mom, I was shouting at her. She's sitting here holding a secret, protecting this man. You know what I mean? And you would think I'd get over it. And I know a couple days ago I was mentioning the fact that he was dead over and over and over again. I cannot get it out of my head. I am very angry because the more I sit here every day without a job, with nothing to do, with my life being, taking a back seat, me trying to figure out or getting anxiety attacks every time I have to log into Indeed.com, worried about how I'm going to have a future, all of this was his fault, or a good chunk of it, okay? Because I know that I was targeted before that, okay? Like, obviously there's some sort of connection with the Muma family. They're Mormon. Now, I don't really, I think that maybe perhaps when it comes to Rex may have been like a person, may not have, because there's a church name mentioned in his financial records at the job, okay? And I'm not going to say the church's name because I don't see any point in that. But I don't recognize it as being a part of the Mormon church. And I mentioned this in my newsletter, but I also mentioned that I know that he was in collaboration with Steve Murray, who was from another church, and I do believe that they're where they joined or where they agreed or what they thought of is that they connected with the idea of certain things, okay, even though their doctrines are supposed to be completely separate. They obviously united in the idea of the racial ideology, okay? And they also probably thought, okay, in order to maintain that, we have to control the women. So these people probably got together and created this, and then it spiraled into what we have now, right? When we have these covert operations, I just saw a video on Facebook earlier today. A girl was talking about, she was kind of experiencing the same thing I experienced. It looks like the video that was posted was made a few months ago, okay? But this whole thing spread and got way out of control. I am understanding that my mom and my family knew about this. And like I said, my son never talks to me about stuff like that, but what angers me is that this man knew the trauma that he was causing, and he waited forever to do anything about it. And then he offers me a job at his shitty place. You have to understand how I feel. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't have to understand, but I mean, this is like really traumatizing to me. You know what I mean? It is traumatizing to me. And every day I wake up with this, I'm tired of being in this situation. I am angry because something like this could have happened, Anyway, so I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to find something to do? And I will tell you, I don't really spend a lot of time looking for work because of the trauma. I don't. I set up like one day a week, okay, and that's a lot for me, okay, and it shouldn't even be that way, but because somebody bullied me to the point, in a manner or over something that is taken seriously. Somebody's telling me I don't have the right to support myself. Somebody's, making, trying to play games with me, and his, the reasons were because I understand it had something to do with the Mormon thing, and apparently I get the feeling that they must have put pressure on my father when my father was alive because of how I dressed and everything. Mind you, they're not supposed to, my family's never supposed to come right out and tell me that. So I believe that the Mormon church, instructed my family to do this sort of stuff to me without really coming out and saying it. And to me, this whole thing was meant to hurt and divide people and cause the chaos that it did. Okay, because I will thinking back when I was growing up in elementary school and stuff like that. My mom bought me some of the most pretty frilly clothes, and I always had like beautiful clothes when I did go to church. Now I wasn't a big church goer; we only went for a while. But when we did, it was like I had beautiful clothes. I always had nice clothes for school. I always had clothes. My mom always coordinated cute stuff. She did my hair and all this other stuff. So why is it that she can raise me to be a girl, which I am a girl, and a lot of other girls do the same thing? But when I got to be a teenager, all of a sudden that sort of stuff stopped. It's not that I stopped because I still kept wearing clothes, but it's like, well, my parents never, my mom just raised me to be a girl. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? But, the Mormon church was playing a lot of head games, and I do believe that they were bullying my father over it, among other things, okay? So it's like, my sister Lisa started resenting me, as we got older. And the last time, I mentioned a few years ago when I made a video, the last time I went over to see my sister and got in a little bit of a confrontation with her, I could tell that she was just nothing but resentful towards me, and she acted like she didn't want having to do with me over who I was. You know what I mean? And I understood that my sister was a little bit jealous of me. And see, they use this as a way to ignite the tension. You know what I mean? Anyway, and I know, like I said, I've talked about this before, but it just boggles my mind how destructive people can be, and situations can escalate into something that can affect a person for the rest of their life. Okay? And this is one of the reasons why this stuff is written into law. Okay? Because it destroys lives. It destroys lives. I am 54 years old, and I'm scared to death to even look for a job because of these people. Anyway, I kept thinking maybe I should go and check out Roller-Rama. Now, I have not been to Roller-Rama in a long time, okay? Like, the first time I moved here in Bakersfield, I went to Roller-Rama, and the one over there on 34th Street. And I don't really care if it sounds nerdy or if it sounds childish. I need to get out of the house, okay? And I'm bored, and there's nothing to do. And some people, they want to go, to a bar or something, because I'm not a bar type person. And there really isn't any of the kind of activity places that I would want to go to here in Bakersfield, at least, unless, of course, I'm not aware of them. Because I pretty much do live like a shut-in. Because of them. Because of Rex Laverne and his stupid shit. You know what I mean? Anyway, so I don't really know. I pretty much go and leave my house out of necessity. So there might be a place over across town that is one of the kind of places that I'd like to go to. But I just definitely need to get out of that house. And I do miss going to the roller rink. I think the last time I went to the roller rink, I used to go with my sister a lot when I was a teenager. And it was, I think, the early or the mid 80s is when I stopped going to the roller rink, but it was an activity, okay? And it was like a, pretty inexpensive one that, it's a nice activity. And I like listening to music. And I remember when I was really young, before I started going to the roller rink, when I was a little girl, I was like this, almost like what was that girl who was really good at ice skating? Her name was she used to do the Hamel Camel. I used to be able to do it on roller skates. I was badass on roller skates. Okay, and of course I'm not now, but I just miss being, I want that. This is what I choose for my life because I honestly do find nothing but bullshit in my adult life. So I try to go back as much as I possibly can. Anyway, I also got a message, about how much life is so much better on heaven than it is on earth. And that was just a message that kept rolling through my mind. I do get the feeling that there's a lot of, in the past, there really was no evolution in religion and religious thinking. And like I said, I walked away from religion a long time ago, and I preferred it that way. So when I find out that Rex Laverne was working behind the scenes to try to, corral me into some Mormon thing, or anybody doing that to me, it pisses me off because my life has been severely affected and taken a back seat, stagnated, all because of something that I would have refused. And I'm angry that my parents knew, or my mom knew, that this was a Mormon associated thing, knowing how she knew good and well how I felt about religion. She knew how I felt about it. Okay? And she did not listen to me. But I understand that these people use coercive tactics to, manipulate your family members and everything else. Okay? This is wrong. you know. And this is one of the other reasons why it prompts me to make the moral reset, because this sort of stuff should never happen ever again. Anyway, but I do think that people are starting to understand the needs of women, and stop vilifying women who get in these sort of situations. It's not a rebellion because a woman wants to get on with her life. It is not rebellion because a woman wants to take care of herself. It's not rebellion. Okay, but I do understand that there's always been the need to populate and that sort of stuff. But you need to populate with people who are consenting and people who want to. And I'm sure there are, but you have to smooth out the problems that exist in the family unit in the first place. I would say a lot of church relationships might be, what do you call it? Orchestrated. You know what I mean? Kind of. I personally think that my parents' relationship was orchestrated. Okay, and when people really aren't compatible, that becomes a problem. Okay, and some people are just, they might be marrying for, I've noticed that, white people, no offense, okay, white people, and I guess maybe the whole institution of marriage is based on, like, um, merging finances and stuff like that. And, the thing is, like, I'm a little iffy, I'm nervous about that, because I mentioned before, I'm the kind of person that people would take advantage of, okay? But people can get taken advantage of in those situations, especially since it's like you feel like you're relying on somebody else, okay? And this is when people start getting abusive, you know what I mean? So there's got to be other ways, and other ways of building relationships for the long term for people who want to have families, in order to get along. It all has to do with compatibility. And I personally think that people should marry for harmony, instead of thinking, oh, it's okay if I can just kind of overlook these little things that are eventually going to erode the relationship over time, okay? And I think it has a lot to do with the mindset of people who are getting together, and then also I was also considering people who, it's the issue of people who aren't compatible in the first place, or the pressure of committing into a relationship where that can also be a very difficult thing for people to do biologically, and so on and so forth. Okay, because me, I really don't like talking about the subject of marriage very much, because I'm not somebody who's gung ho for marriage, mainly because of everything that's gone on in my life. And I honestly do not believe that people are naturally made to be monogamous. I don't believe that. Okay, that's my personal choice, and I've never. But the only reason why I'm saying it is because talking about it right now is because I do understand people are not as interested in being a part of traditional families and stuff like that. Well, right now you need to smooth out the issue of, number one, the work issue. Okay, because like I told you, it's very difficult to raise a family when you can't find a job, and then you're going to get another job 6 months. That how that puts you behind. You know what I mean? It puts you behind in rent, or it could put you behind in living expenses, and then once you get back on your feet, you got to pick up where you left off. It's terrible, right? So that issue needs to be taken care of. Employment issues, so that people can feel secure. Okay, a lot of people argue over money, and a lot of times, if your relationship is built on a foundation of money, then you really don't want to be arguing over that, right? And so if the issue of employment is like difficult for people to find jobs, maintain jobs, and plus the stress of dealing with bosses that are adding more unnecessary stress on you, your family to you is not going to be a blessing, which it should be. It's going to be looked upon as a burden. You know what I mean? And this is what people have been living like for the longest time. I'm a realist, okay? So I'm just saying it's not that I don't think people should have families. They should, but I think the standards need to be changed in order for people to be happy. Anyway, so, and yes, I do believe that women, should, and it's not, when I talk about women's rights, okay, I think people know that I have never been into politics. The only reason why I'm talking about, life, how I think life is for me, or how I think society would run better, is only because I had to deal with this very painful issue, okay, of somebody trying to force me into a situation, okay? That's the only thing. Anyway, okay, the other message that I got is that, Rex Laverne was, felt like he wanted to manipulate my employment Not only because of the apparition, but it was also because he felt as though people found me, some people found me to be attractive. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I do not look at myself as somebody who's beautiful. I like to wear nice clothes. I obviously see myself at all the flaws that I have on me, okay? But, some people, I don't know if, I know the Mormons were bullying me over my clothes and stuff like that. I don't, I will tell you, when men or anybody constantly focuses on a woman and tries to make her compromise who she is, you are destroying her. Now, this is a topic that women know how they feel about this issue. They don't like it. They never liked it. It makes them very uncomfortable. And it is meant to be an uncomfortable issue. Okay. But that is something, I don't even appreciate people trying to joke or trying to bully me over how I present myself. This is who I am. 100%, meaning like this is how I enjoy my life, and I want to project who I am to people, and it is what it is. I'm angry that he thought, oh, I'm gonna, she has to have my approval. I just cannot stand that man. I'm so glad he's dead. So glad he's dead. Okay, but I don't wear clothes for male approval. I wear clothes because it's the only thing I care about, really, in life. I don't care about too much of anything else. I really don't. Okay. I don't have a family. I don't have anything. But throughout life, I understand like the work sector is a nightmare. Everything to me is outside of my life is nothing but shit. And so the only thing I care about is my clothes and whatever. And if men find me attractive or women find me attractive, because apparently I get this message too, okay, I am not a lesbian, but if people find me attractive, well, then that's a good thing, right? Because in life, if you choose to, I personally think in life it's a good thing if you have the ability to have the person that you want or attract the kind of person that you want. So that's a good thing. So everything that Rex and the Mormons were sitting here trying to attack me for, it was done because it was a form of torture, bullying, or some sort of whatever. It's wrong. Okay? Women should, when I remember I'm talking to a girl one time and she was telling me about how they were bothering her at work. The girls were bullying her over her looks and stuff like that. And she was really upset about it, right? Because, the reason why, okay, how can I say this? If you live a good life, okay, you're not, it's going to show. Okay, your choices are going to show. It's a walking advertisement of who you are on the inside. This is a fact, okay? And I know it's an uncomfortable situation for a lot of people. And no, I have not received any harassment over it. But when people bully women over this issue, okay, because women feel, and I think a lot of men feel this way too, they want to be vibrating. They want to be happy and they want to project that. That's the good thing. As a matter of fact, I remember reading that kind of stuff in school. This is what we learned in school. Grooming and personal grooming and how to make, actually there used to be, what do you call it, educational things, black and white educational things on how to be attractive, how to be this sort of stuff. So it's not a bad thing to be. Okay, but seems that way when people are trying to control the population. If a woman feels bad about herself, well, then her husband can have more control over her. You see what I'm saying? So, no, I do believe that, people should be at their best. You know what I mean? And for a lot of women right now, or men too, who are trying to transform themselves from being unhappy, and they're trying to get themselves back to where they want to look in the mirror and be okay with it. You know what I mean? So consider yourself in transition, consider yourself in healing if this is what you're into right now. But aside from that, maybe he wanted to try to force me into relationships or whatever. And see, that bothers me. Okay? It's like the whole Rex Laverne thing just angers me so much. And I also think it's important to talk about this issue because some people don't realize, how offensive it is and how wrong it is to bully women over their looks. They really don't. They don't understand how wrong it is. It's wrong. Okay? It is a good thing if a woman is projecting herself. It's a good thing if a woman cares about putting together her clothes and presenting herself well. Okay, now I'm not somebody who tries to go for being sexy, but I do enjoy my clothes. You know what I mean? And that's like my lifeline. It is. It's like I love that. Anyway, my next message. Okay, I got the message that a lot of people agree that I am proving that there's a lot of lawlessness and ignorance in people. Okay, and of course, this is one of the reasons why I did it. And this is another reason why I'm doing the moral reset, because I understand a lot of people, um, they don't put these things together. You know what I mean? I'm surprised that, some of the law offices would actually participate in something like this. You know what I mean? But see, the thing is that, lawyers who can be bought, okay? Because to me, it's like you're bribing people. Oh, you have to do this, or if a lawyer belongs to a particular religion, why would he let his religion compromise his duty as a lawyer? It seems bizarre to me. You know what I mean? I don't know, whatever. But I think differently than people, but I'm not ashamed of that. I'm actually glad I do. Anyway, I think a lot of adults also agree and share my sentiment that they kind of wish that they could not be adults as well. Um, I keep it in the proper perspective because, I do like childhood things, okay? But I'm very much aware, I'm sad and painfully aware, okay, that I'm an adult. I'm aware of it. I'm aware that I owe taxes for 2024. I'm aware that I have to find a job. I'm aware I have bills to pay. I'm aware of the fact that I don't have a car, and most adults do. I'm aware that I was attacked by Mormons. I'm aware of all of that. You know what I mean? I'm an adult. Okay, I get that. Okay, but stepping out into a different mindset. If childhood connection is what gets me through, if those little fantasies or ideas is what helps soothe my pain, which there is plenty, I'm going to do that. Okay, because I understand I'm not crazy. Okay, it's a coping mechanism is what it is, and I encourage other people to do that as well, because it feels good. I mean, there's some people who are are buying baby dolls or playing with miniatures or whatever. Like, I think the idea of miniatures are great. I wish I had a miniature dollhouse. It kind of makes you feel good, because like if you can't buy a nice house yourself, you can at least peer into a little tiny one. It's soothing. You know what I mean? It's great. Anyway, I do get the feeling that there's a lot of people who are trying to create better workplaces, and I'm all for that. You know what I mean? I have always wanted to create my own work environment, be the leader of a new work environment. Unfortunately, I get the shittiest job offers, and that has a lot to do with the Mormon orchestration. But mind you, I don't really feel like I want to be like, you know what I mean? It's like, to me, it's like I don't know what to think about work anymore, other than I just need a job. You know what I mean? But I know that I cannot put up with an environment like, you know, uh, some of the things I've had to deal with in the past. And I want to reiterate that, while I was working at Laverne and Son, I did enjoy working there. Why? Because it was quiet most of the time. Okay. But now that I think about it, I do know that it was overly quiet sometimes, and this was, a lot of it was done by Rex Laverne, the orchestrator, and a lot of the other places that I worked at. It was like sometimes I would feel isolated. They would do this on purpose. They would do it on purpose, and they do it on purpose because they want to send a message. Oh, I don't like what you're wearing, or whatever. It's their little behavior modification shit. And you know what? I didn't ask for that. I feel violated that this man sucked up my time. You know what I mean? And there's days where I wish I could resurrect him and just put him in front of a firing squad and just load his fucking head with bullets over and over and over and over again. You know what I mean? I'm being honest about my feelings. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel. Anyway, I also got the intuitive message that, Elon Musk um, wants to hang out with me. And I did get a message from him recently, and I'm not somebody who tells my business, but, because all of this is weird, it kind of interconnects. We did talk about that briefly. It would be really cool to meet him. It would be cool, and I understand, and I think a lot of people are kind of like interested in the whole idea that I would be interested in being friends with Elon Musk. But the thing is that, um, I've always wanted to pick his brain. You know what I mean? He seems like a fascinating person. Why not? You know what I mean? I don't want people to start over projecting or making up, rumors or anything like that. I just want to get to know him. And yeah, I do think he's cute. I've always thought Elon Musk was cute. He's got this like little baby face and stuff. I think he's adorable. But, it's nice to get to know someone. So I can see why people are fascinated with that, because when you think about how I am, I'm kind of like a, hang on a second, I think something's wrong with my computer. Hang on. Okay. I just want to make sure, because if I'm not careful, my screen will just blank out, and then I have to reset it all over again. I told you about that before, but anyway, yeah. When it comes to me, I'm somebody who, I'm arts and crafty. I'm kind of a country girl in a lot of ways, and what I mean by that is like, I like nature and stuff like that. And when I think of people like Elon Musk, he talks about going to Mars and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, but there's just it's funny who you can find yourself being interested in. It is what it is. You know what I mean? To me, it's like I think we're meant to be friends. That's it. Okay. So anyway, okay. So I was thinking about Earth dwellers this morning, right? I was thinking about how I talked about uh, the idea of clones and how this relates to certain books of the Bible, specifically like the ones that are talking about prophetic futures and stuff like that, like Revelations and I'm even including the Book of Mormon, even though like okay, I know when I was growing up, and I'd be probably before that, before Maria Gordon even existed, now the C.B. Regans or whatever. A lot of Orthodox, quote unquote, Orthodox, even though they kind of veer off from being Orthodox themselves, but the majority of the Christian denominations were iffy about the Mormon religion, mainly because they had introduced a third testament into what they call, the scriptures or whatever. Now, most people believe, based off of the Bible, talking about how it was supposed to be complete and to not add or take away from. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people were like, what the hell is this Book of Mormon? But I do believe the Book of Mormon possibly could be looking at it from a cloning perspective, much like, books like Revelations and stuff like that, like prophetic type stuff. And the reason, and why it does that doesn't really make me feel like charged or overly excited is because the cloning thing is an orchestration by man. That's why. Okay, but okay, I do think that both Jehovah's Witnesses and both Mormons, okay, I'm gonna kind of classify them as earth dwellers, okay, because Jehovah's Witnesses believe that only 144,000 go to heaven. Okay, and that I'm going to heaven eventually. Okay, I'm just going to go to heaven. I don't want to come back here. I hate this place. Okay, but they believe that there are certain people who are going to heaven. They say 144,000, which they refer to as the little flock. And this is based on the Bible, but it's based on their interpretation. This is what I'm saying. All these religions have like pretty much the same Bible, but different versions, and they also have different interpretations. They all have the same like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, blah 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 blah. But some of them, the wording is different, a little word tweaked here, whatever. They all have the same stuff, but everybody has their own interpretation. Do you see how people get very confused and they don't know which path to go to? But I am completely identifying these two specific religions, Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormonism, as earth dwellers, and I'm going to consider them to be clone focused. Okay, now their vision of like what people talk about, and like some of the people in my soul tribe who have like strong positions may in the past and may even recently been mentioning things like the New World Order. Okay, now Freemasons obviously they understand this stuff. Okay, but Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons are also offshoots of these particular secret society, and they created these religions. Okay, as a matter of fact, Mormons had based a lot of their rituals off of Mormon rituals. So Jehovah's Witnesses view, and they don't refer to it as the New World Order, they refer to it as the New Earth, okay? Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons seem to disagree on certain things, okay, that I'm starting to think about. Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe that there's going to be a monetary system, okay? And the Mormons seem to enjoy the monetary system. They seem like they want the monetary system even after the New Earth. And so this is where there's going to be a disagreement, okay? Because Jehovah's Witnesses are visualizing a paradise on earth, right? Where they're just like strolling. Like I would think I'd just be like strolling down the street. I want an apple. I'm going to grab it off one of my neighbor's tree. I'm going to wave to them. They're going to be like, hey, everything's free, okay? Like I'm thirsty and somebody's just going to come out and give me some lemonade. I don't have to pay for shit. That's pretty much how they see it. And there's no class structure. according to the Jehovah's Witnesses. There is no class, meaning there is no, I have an iPhone and you're a piece of shit because you have an Android. You know, that kind of stuff. Because there's no monetary system. There is nobody able to one-up you because everybody's going to be basically the same. Now, Mormons, if there is a I'm getting too deep on this, okay? But I'm going to talk about this anyway because it's on my mind, okay? But Mormons seem to want to continue to be they're very connected to business. They're very connected to the monetary system. Now, because of the monetary system, this is one of the biggest things that turns me off on earth, okay? And the reason why is because I've mentioned this before. Money turns people into fiends. It turns people into hounds. It makes family members turn on each other and be looked upon as money-making machines. And this is one of the reasons why there is very little love in the world, okay? I mean, money turns people into animals, basically. You know, they always say money, the root of evil, money is the root of all evil. You know, I would say it kind of is, okay? So this makes me think, when we think about how this whole cloning thing started, we're talking about Archon's demiurge, okay? So I think about this kind of stuff because I don't believe that the whole idea of cloning came out of the most, glorious means, okay? But like I said, there can be order out of chaos, right? So you want to continue, you still want to come back to the earth, okay, fine. Okay, fine. So how is this going to be? Is there going to be a monetary system or there not? Now, me and my dad used to talk about this. We talked about it as like the New World Order. That's what we used to talk about. And he used to talk about how they were going to eliminate money as we know it and bring in a currency called rainbow money. And it may not actually be like a rainbow, but it could be like meaning like different colors and it's across the board. That's what he was visualizing, something like that. You know what I mean? Whatever the case is, there's different disagreements on that. So let's just say, for example, then society is split. We split society to where Jehovah's Witnesses are living off the land. Maybe like agricultural type areas, and then like people who are like the Mormon type of people, they're the ones who are running it. And maybe, see, now how would that work with Jehovah's Witness type people? And they're not Jehovah's Witnesses, but I'm just talking about people on earth in general. Will they be working for Mormon people? And see, the thing is, this is one of the things that makes me wonder about the whole robot thing, like the robots. Because I know that they were talking about eliminating people and then having robots replace people and their jobs. There's still a whole lot of fine-tuned work that needs to be done before people decide exactly how we proceed, okay? But I do think that it's interesting to know that Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the people on the earth, once they are here, are going to be perfect, meaning like no sin. I do find it interesting that I'm bringing up the moral reset, okay? But that does not mean that, like, I think I have pretty good morals, okay? I think I have pretty good morals, but I do sin, okay? So I don't believe that Jehovah's Witnesses meant like they're going to be perfect, even though they describe it as perfect. How would that be? Unless, of course, you can be cloned, right? You can be cloned without the desire to sin, or would somebody have to, would they be sinless because they follow a strict code of ethics? And there would be no reason to sin. If all of their needs are fulfilled, they most likely would be satisfied, right? So why would you feel like the need to have to stab somebody for what they have because you can already have it, right? If you can just pull food off of a tree, why would you need to do that, right? Okay, so, but Mormons, right? It seems as though if we have a monetary system, when we know anything that relates to money, okay, that's usually tied to sin. It really is. People get greedy. How are you going to prevent people from the basic human nature that comes into them, wanting that, having uncontrollable desires to have more? Okay, like for example, let's just say, for example, in the new world order or the new earth or whatever, I'm hanging out with Donald Trump has a better house than me, and it's pissing me off. Okay, Donald Trump has a better house than me, and it's pissing me off. Now, I'm not the kind of person who's competitive or anything like that. I'm just using him as an example. You know, I might feel jealous that Donald Trump has a better house than me, and you know, if we're still in the monetary system and I still don't have quite as much money as Donald Trump, is that going to make me, is that sort of desire to sin, quote unquote sin, or try to one up him, or is that going to lead me into the path of crime because I'm going to, you know, how would you monitor or make people fall in line? Well, in this case, if we have a monetary system, then we're going to have law enforcement on it. If somebody falls out of the line of common decency, they would probably most likely have to be executed on the spot. Now, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I'm thinking this through. Like, how would you, you know, eliminate people or prevent people from going on the wrong path? Right? I'm giving some thought to it, okay? Also, I would think that if Jehovah's Witnesses were going to be perfect, well, perfect. If you could be perfect. I personally think it's not so much perfect. I think it's more of them having better morals, okay? And having it easy to follow those morals because they're not in a situation of lack, okay? But, or if there's a way that you could remove that desire out of a person, like remove their, see, and that's just like walking around like some sort of like person who had like a lobotomy. It seems like he would not really be a whole person, whatever. But there are two different ideas behind the cloning and how they proceed into this new world. So it needs to be. I personally think that some people love the monetary system so much that they're not going to want to give that up, and it's going to continue. Okay, but so how will sin be maintained? Then, like I said, then chances are there would have to be a very, very strict monetary system. I mean, not monetary system. I'm sorry, law enforcement. There would have to be very strict law enforcement. You know what I mean? And then if there is a money system, you know what I mean? If there's going to be a money system, then there would have to be. I'm trying to think this through. Okay, seriously. If there's a money system, right? How would they be able to make money and still? Wait, okay. It's the issue of class, because it seems as though when there's money, there's always an issue of class, meaning there's always somebody above you. You know what I mean? Like Donald Trump's got a bigger house than me in my little, New World Order utopia, okay? And if I was the kind of person who was really competitive, I would be discontent. But it seems like, couldn't I just go out and buy another one? Or I don't know. I'm going to have to work all that out. But my point is that there's two different versions of that. Now, I also got the intuitive message in the view in my mind that people are recognizing that I do have royal lineage. Actually, I have heavenly lineage, but I guess that's the only thing that they could think of is calling it royal, and I guess that's the way it is. And that's cool. Also, I got this message about the divine providence versus man-made puppetry. The divine providence is obviously somebody who has the ability to perform miracles, being able to do certain things. And then we have, like, for example, divine providence, and then we have man-made puppetry. And I would call cloning man-made puppetry. You know what I mean? That's not me saying it in a negative way or putting myself down, but I do believe the whole thing is based on man-made stuff, okay? And because it was invention, not invention, but, I guess I'll call it that. Well, no, because I was created as Maria Gordon from Joseph Mengele, but people have been cloned before. I was actually cloned before as C.B. Reganza. I don't know exactly what they were experimenting on me for as Maria Gordon. Chances are they were looking at my psychic abilities, and possibly they were observing just my manners and who I am. I do know that the people in my soul tribe think very highly of me because of who I am as King Solomon. But when it comes to the divine providence versus the man-made puppetry, it's more like, me focusing on my desire to be in heaven. I would prefer to be in heaven. Now, I understand I don't believe in suicide. I don't, but I honestly, I just feel as though I do not believe that the world has been run in a way where it promotes any good positive feelings. I think most people are very resentful on how things have turned out. I think most people are very unhappy with their lives or whatever. And I think that the idea of going to heaven, or people obstructing others from being in heaven, meaning their eternal rest. Meaning, I'm angry and resentful that people would tamper with such a thing. And I can understand why the Jews were talking about that issue when they found out some of the Mormons were doing the baptismal of the dead. Because, everybody has their view of what happens to you after you die. And that to me is sacred. If you put somebody to rest, that should be it. You know what I mean? That should be the end of it. I think sometimes maybe it's because Mormons don't understand the legalities of it, and I don't really think there may not be a law specifically on that, unless of course you have some sort of will that says that you specifically want to be buried and not be messed with. I don't know, but unfortunately, I think that Mormons, don't understand. Like, for example, in my case, okay. Like, I know there was a time where my sister at one time was like responsible for my employment. My sister was in the know. She understood that, they were trying to mess with me as well as my mom. What they didn't understand was I was an adult and I don't really have to listen to anything my sister says, my dad says, or my mom says. I'm over the age of 18. See, they don't understand, like, that I'm not even Mormon, right? It's like they don't understand the legal issues and whatever. And that's the fault of man. And I do believe that, we live in a very lawless society. I do get the message that I make people believe in the divine. I think, oh, that's good. I think that's the reason why I'm here. I'm giving people an idea of what God really is. Now, I am not saying that I am God, okay? But I'm saying it's the reason why I have higher standards is because I'm somebody who truly does believe in divine providence, right? That's what I am. So that's good that people are thinking that way. Also, the other message I got, and I wrote this down. I should have mentioned this one before. Same thing. It's the earth dwellers love the monetary system. Okay, I don't. As a matter of fact, the reason why I do prefer heaven to earth is because I don't want my life to be contingent upon how the economy is, what's going on, these underground operations. It's no life. There's no life. You know what I mean? The very fact that things are supposed to be free, you're supposed to have freedom, and then you have people working behind the scenes. This to me is so tragic. You know what I mean? And thinking about how life is hard already, and then you have people who would do things like this to create these sort of hardships. It's terrible. So anyway, I did get the message that a lot of people are choosing heaven as well, and I think that's wonderful. But in the meantime, I think the most important thing right now, in order for the New World Order to actually take place, whether there's going to be a monetary system or people are going to be living like on agricultural areas where everything's spread out and people are eating like communal type, has shares of the communal type garden or whatever, I don't know. That needs to be fixed and worked out. But right now, the main issue is people want to build families, they want to maintain their families, they want to get their family structures in order, and they also want to feel better about how they make a living. So I do think the work issue needs to be focused on first. I am working on the moral reset. Today I didn't feel like doing anything. I did not. I felt like shit today. I didn't feel happy. I think it's because I've been watching things on Facebook a little too much, and I feel as though some things that I see on Facebook can create depression in me, like, because I hear a lot of people talking about them being victims of being targeted individuals, watching other people talk about their being terrified, being depressed, being disappointed, same stuff I talk about, but in some ways I appreciate them voicing it because they need to get it out, they need to talk about it, but I also know it can be very overwhelming having other people listen to it if they don't want to listen to it, you know what I mean? So making videos is good, but the sad part is like there's hardly anything positive, to hear, ever. It's usually always something negative. So, and I have to be my own motivator. I have to protect myself. And so sometimes by me, going into fantasy world, which I'm still very much rooted into reality, but I'm talking about me bringing out my childhood toys or me listening to music or whatever. I have to do something because, it just comes, sometimes it just gets to be too much. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video, and I hope I didn't go too crazy about the New World Order thing, but, it's a lot to think about. It's like, I understand some people really love the monetary system, but to me, the monetary system is something that just, when you throw money into the mix, it just seems to make people into animals. And I guess, how they, and I'm not trying to bring it to the Bible. And I want to talk about the Bible really quick. I do think the Bible has a lot of great sayings in it. I do look at the Bible now, and after I've lived through this situation, as, different people who wrote accounts based off their perspective, okay? And I'm talking about all perspectives. And I do understand, in many the cultures at the time, a lot of people did, have a lot of wives. I myself, as King Solomon, had a lot of wives and stuff. But as we progress through different lifetimes, I do believe that people should become more humane. Meaning, like, I understand women went through hell a long time ago, and we looked at certain people in a certain way at one time, culturally or whatever. But I think, as you progress, you start seeing things different. And from somebody who's lived both sides, as a woman as well as a man, okay? I was a woman, King Tut's wife. After he died, I was a woman who was tossed around, relatives. It's a nightmare, okay? But I was also King Solomon, who had wives and concubines. So I've seen both sides. But as I understand what it's like, to survive and not have anyone to take care of you. And I don't want anyone taking care of me. I don't ever want to be a burden on anyone. I don't believe in being a burden at all. I don't think people, have any self-respect when they see themselves as burdens. Okay. So I believe in taking care of myself, but, it's just the fact that, women struggle, and it's not an act of defiance. It's not saying that people don't appreciate or have family values. It's just the way it is. You know what I mean? And when people progress and they start to understand things without these sort of biases, it becomes like, okay, I understand this now. It is not about somebody who's just trying to, like, screw men over, or it's saying that I don't like men or anything like that. Although some of the men that I had to deal with throughout my life, I wasn't really happy with, but I'm not trying to paint that all on one person. I'm just saying is people have special situations to where they have to survive, and that's the only way they can. You know what I mean? And just because I choose to survive doesn't mean that I'm going to give up the things that I love. No way. That's going to help me hang on to life. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video. I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm trying to monitor my mood right now because, like I said, my mood has been really down because I need more activity. I need more stimulation. And I don't like being in this situation. I'm frustrated in trying to give my life, more excitement. I'm not happy. So anyway, be back with another video sometime later. Take care. Bye.